Hi guys, Dugan here with a new video, and this video will be a solo shuffle tier list video for 10.2.5, and we got a new patch note, and I've played loads of solo shuffle, and it is not a prediction. I'm pretty sure about the meta right now. I might be wrong about a few things, but I think it's mostly because of perspective, and I think nobody can have like a perfect tier list, but I do try to explain my reasonings behind every single placement, hence the length of the video, but also hence the explanation I do give for every single spec and every single class. Again, I try to give my explanation like as good as possible. So I invite everyone to watch the whole video, listen to the whole video, and then debate with me in the comment section below if you would like. And then you can at least understand my point of view and my standpoints behind every single spec. Also, I do play like every single spec nearly. Like I think there's only like a few specs I'm not playing. Like for example, augmentation evoker, holy priest. I'm like not touching too much these days. But I might start because I think it's a bit better than previously. But let's start. Let's start with affliction warlock, and I might edit along the way the S, A, B, C, and D tier. If I'm making another tier between or not, it will depend on the cohesion of the tier list. Now, affliction warlock. Let's talk about affliction warlock really quickly. I do feel like the meta has been shapen a bit better for them like on the long term, but I think it still has the difficulties of being like a spec relying on longer games. The good thing is the games are being longer right now because of the stamina buff. Stamina buff means also affliction warlock gets a bigger dark pact, death coil as well, like a mortal coil as well, and just in general, it feels like you're doing a pretty much a bit better than previously, but I can't take it higher than B tier because I do feel like again you are relying too much on your allies to survive like the whole duration of the match, but also just in general you are also relying on the healer being able to position themselves pretty well versus your TPs and your portals. That they know, look, you're not going to one-shot someone at the start of the match, so don't play for early game, try to play for the later game, where obviously affliction warlock are a bit better. But I feel like there is too much like of a big question mark on a lot of aspects that I cannot bring myself to put them higher. I do feel like, yes, the meta is kind of shaping around, like at least step by step towards the affliction warlock meta that could be liked for them, but right now it is not the case. So I feel like again you can win games and you can do well, but I don't think you have like great lobbies every single time. You have like better lobbies here and there. You have some bad lobbies against you sometimes, and some better ones a bit randomly. So I would say it's B tier. I want to talk first about the warlock specs. Destruction warlock is in my opinion S tier. I think it's like, if I'm not mistaken, at least the best caster. Not ranged, but best caster. I mean, they could be the best range, but best caster in the meta. It does a lot of damage. It's quite unstoppable. The stamina buff helped them a bit, for sure. Again, I think in general, the meta is going well for them. Caster lobbies, you're not doomed. Melee lobbies, you're actually not doomed. I know that some people do think that way, but it is not the case. You can do very well. Sometimes it is a bait to go for Destruction Warlock because again, there's only one thing you want to stop is Chaos Bolt, but if he refuses to cast Chaos Bolts, you're going to kick Fear or Immolate or Incinerates, and then he will start casting Chaos Bolts. It is actually very strong. Personally, I do play Destruction Warlock. I do like it. I do feel like the meta is shaping around them, and they are very powerful with 3 schools to cast, and you just don't need to cast too much Chaos Bolts and you'll be doing good. Some Destruction Warlock forgets to actually cast like Incinerates or Shadow Burns, or even just like triple rifting every single minute. That's actually very big, but some people are forgetting about it and then they blame about like being trained, while you have the tools to actually deal damage although you are trained, right? So again, S tier in my opinion. Demonology Warlock, I feel like the armor nerfs around plates is actually affecting them as well, because their demons do also a bit of physical damage. And also just in general, stamina buff, very good for Demonology Warlocks. I do feel like CC is king these days. And that's the way you end up winning games. I do feel like Demonology Warlock can win games because of that. And now I'm going to make another tier, because I do feel like I'm not going to put them at the same tier as a Destruction Warlock. But I do feel like Demonology Warlock does deserve a plus. They have great damage. They have multiple schools, although again, people are kicking you on Shadow most of the time, because again, Fear is very, very strong. Also, about those 3 specs, Fear got buffed, and sometimes it feels like it's taking way too much damage. It feels bugged, in my opinion, but like, especially if you're playing versus a Shadow Priest or a Priest in general, it feels like they are not getting broken. So I wonder if there is something going to be fixed about it, but right now Fear is very strong. It feels not on par with Cyclone, but very close to Cyclone, and it's spammable, so again, very strong. If they do kick you on Fear, you still have your other school to play with, your Hand of Gul'dan and such. So again, you're not doomed. And I feel like Demonology Warlock, although it feels like you're doing nothing all game long, and you watch the details, you will see that you're top damage or top 2 in a social format where you were the target. So again, I think A plus is deserved. Also, MS effect, very big. Again, there are lobbies where you are the sole and only MS effect, and that does feel very bad for the opposing healer, right? The difference is very big whether you have a MS effect or not on your team. Let's talk about mage really quickly. I think arcane, I'm going to repeat, this is not a noob friendly spec. I already made a video about it. I think you have to main it to be very good at it. But once you are very good at it, it feels like unstoppable. I'm not going to make the tier list like for rank 1s, because again, I think a rank 1 can make even Frost Decay very strong and very obnoxious. But I think arcane mage is very strong at all kinds of levels. It just depends on the people playing it and feeling like, look, you're a real main, or look, you're just testing a spec. In my opinion, A plus. I think it's very strong. It's very annoying to deal with. Very annoying to go for him as well, especially like if you're a warrior or a DH. Feels like you're hitting butter, and it doesn't do anything at the end, because you have a lot of defensives, and if you don't have a purge on your team, it feels like very bad to go for arcane. If you have a purge on your team, like a double purge, for example, Shaman or Priest, then it's alright to go for arcane mage, or with a master spell, for example, for ice block sometimes. But it feels like, again, if you're like playing holy paladin, warrior, DH, or warrior with a DK, or I would say DK is maybe the only melee where I feel like, okay, arcane mage makes sense. But warrior with a retribution paladin, for example, and with a holy paladin, it feels like super bait to go for arcane. I think arcane has great damage. The force set is really fantastic. The defensive purposes of the spec is there. They got an armor buff, although I'm going to say it's only 2% for them, so it's not going to be big, but it's still there, right? And just overall, I think the meta kind of favors them. And since DK's got nerfed, since you have a few things here and there that are getting nerfed, like for example sub rogue, although I think you should not die to a sub rogue with blink stun, but whatever. Sometimes you're forgetting about it and you got shimmer, and then you're getting ruined by them. But if you have blink stun, you should not be able to die to a sub rogue. But that's it. I think A plus, it kind of deserves a spot. Frost mage, I think I'm going to put them at A tier. I think great frost mages, they know, look, I'm going to polymorph a DPS. He's going to use his spell. I'm going to frost bomb at the same time another target, and he has to choose either dispel the polymorph or either dispel the frost bomb. And by doing that way, you do a lot of crazy damage with frost bomb. Again, I think there are a few frost mages that they exaggerate the fact that you have a great ability, which is frost bomb, but doing a frost bomb just for the frost bomb's sake, without knowing if the dispel is on CD or not, is just a waste of a spell and a waste of a CD, because Frostbomb is not spammable. But if you know how to polymorph and then Frostbomb another target, you will get a lot of results with like a big frost bomb into an array of frost with, or if you're playing with glacial spike, a big glacial spike in that at the same time detonating with frost bomb does insane amount of damage. Then you have people saying like, look, it's a melee meta, which in my opinion it is not, but whatever. It is a melee meta. What can a frost mage do versus melees? And I would say that it's their preferred matchup. They prefer to be actually the target because you have double icebox. So the only thing that can actually ruin you is, let's say, a shattering throw that is not getting stopped, or a mouse spell that is not getting stopped, or just got very early, which can then lead to your death. I think just in general, it's fantastic. Also playing versus, let's say, a holy paladin makes them bob their target, which you can steal if you're lucky very quickly, and makes you immune. And again, it's very strong. I think frost mages in general are very underestimated. I think people are like really discounting them way too soon. I do feel like in threes it's different, in twos it's different, but in soul shuffle I feel like you have the environment for the chaos to do very well for you. In my opinion, damage is really crazy. Although it doesn't feel like on details you will have like top damage, it is not needed. I do feel like the burst damage that you have and the opportunities that you have as a frost mage are unparalleled. And again, you are in control. If you're good at kiting and you know what you're doing as a frost mage, you will be able to be successful at it. So I think frost mage deserves the A spot. A means that it is meta, by the way. A plus means that it's very close to God tier, and S tier means that it is really God tier. B tier, it means actually that it's good, it's not average. It's like good to average. C tier means that it's underpowered, and D tier means it is garbage. Let's talk about farm mage really quickly. I think farm mage, the unfortunate fact that they have is the stamina buff is not really affecting them too much, because they got class cannon PvP talents, and that by itself is not really good. Again, thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you. I think farm mage, they have somewhat of a good damage pattern, but I think the issue is if you're not killing into a combust, you'll have to run for your life most of the game. And it's way more difficult to play farm mage than arcane or frost mage. I would say at a similar level. If you're like a good mage, you would be better on frost mage or arcane mage than a farm mage. You have to be exceptional at farm mage to be able to compare to those two specs. I'm going to put them at C tier. I want to put them at B tier, but I'm going to be honest, the statistics are kind of showing them even D tier. Like they show farm mage being very low, but I think the only, I mean, one of the reasons why it is not that played is because you have two other good specs that are at A tier and A plus, in my opinion. But also, just in general, farm mage is more difficult to play, to survive at least. If you compare to Shadowlands, where you were straight tanks and you were unkillable most of the games, in a good RMP you're not a target, and even then rogue is also not a target, so you have to choose your poison. I think currently farm mage is like one of the easier to target in the game. Like in social, you don't even need to talk, you know that farm mage is a target in most lobbies. Now let's talk about warrior. I think warrior is a good talk. I think people are like overestimating arms warrior in general. I think you can have some pretty bad lobbies where you are at the mercy of your allies to react on a sharpened blade, for example, or to react on your goes. You have to play also on your back foot most of the time if you're playing versus casters, because again they can just like turn on you and you get obliterated. So you have to keep your leap for in case you want to play offensive, or if you want to leap out, and whenever you're leaping out, you know you're going to have a terrible time. The only good thing about arms warrior, in my opinion, is the consistent damage, the damage burst that you can also have, because again I made multiple videos where you can see me crit for 300k, but I think it's also the utility slash the flexibility that you have in multiple comps. You have some really good comps as well. But I think with Holy Paladins being more popular, it makes also a bit more difficult for you to go through to buffs. So again, it will depend if you have a purge or not. Also, I think Bladestorm is the savior of an Arms Warrior, I would say, compared to a Fury Warrior. They can do good, but I think it's mostly because of like Bladestorm being there. Imagine if you didn't have double Bladestorm, I think it would be lower, but I'm going to put them at A tier. I do feel like Frostmage is better than Arms Warrior. People will say, but look at the statistics, we are like top 3 melee, blah blah blah. The thing is about Arms Warrior is it's an insanely popular spec. So obviously the ladder will also show you multiple Arms Warrior being higher at the ladder. It is not a terribly bad spec, but you cannot say, look, Arms Warrior has more rep than Destruction Warlock, so how come that Arms is A tier and Destruction Warlock is S tier? Again, representation on the ladder is not always power of the spec. Destruction Warlock in all kinds of meta, good or bad or medium or OP, will never have more, I would say, ladder representation compared to a very strong and S tier melee. For example, Havoc Demon Hunter will always have way more playable, like played characters at certain MMR compared to Destruction Warlock, although I would say that Destruction Warlock is stronger than a Havoc Demon Hunter. And I think a lot of people can say that. But again, I think people are like fighting the wrong fights with like representation and such. It can only work if you're comparing like two insanely popular specs. For example, Havoc Demon Hunter with a Arms Warrior. If Arms Warrior was way better than Havoc Demon Hunter, you can count on Arms Warrior being ahead of Havoc Demon Hunter. But that's not the case. Again, you have a lot of specs that are very easy to flavor of the month and that are going to obviously get numbers, but some specs are not easy to flavor of the month. For example, if Subtlety Rogue is S tier, which in my opinion, they might not be S tier right now, but whenever it was S tier, it was not really a good flavor of the month spec, because again, you have to pick it up, know the patterns, know, look, if your go is messed up, what do you need to do at that point? Do you panic? Do you stay in combat? Do you spam backstab? Or are you going to know the situation, recognize the situation, and go for the kidneys and the sheep shots that are like useful for your team and for yourself? And that's something that a lot of people are not realizing. And again, I know I'm talking about like a lot of things that has nothing to do with the tier list, but I think people should realize that it's very important to know what are you talking about on specific things, for example, representation and popularity of a spec. Now let's talk about Fury Warrior. I think Fury Warrior is terrible, very terrible. I'm going to put them at C tier. Again, I would even say that they are on the level of Fire Mage, to be honest. I think Fury Warrior, the people are just looking at damage and how they deal damage, and that's it. But you should realize, with more stamina, with longer games, Fury Warrior just becomes worse and worse and worse. Dampening actually just makes your only few defensives redundant, and that's the issue. I think a Die by the Sword, although it's not perfect, you cannot do it while stunned, at least it is not redundant. If you're facing a melee and you're doing a Die by the Sword at 100% dampening or 20% dampening or 40% dampening, a parry is a parry. It doesn't get redundant. But a Fury Warrior doing Enraged Regeneration at 80% dampening, at 60% dampening, at 20% dampening, or at 0% dampening, there is a lot of differences. And people should realize on metas where games are longer, Fury Warrior are going to be trash, first and foremost. But also, the damage patterns is also very trash. It is playing around the 4 set a bit, like the 2 set I would say, playing around your Odin's Fury, which, to be honest, a lot of specs can actually, like for example, if you're playing versus a Holy Paladin, once you see Odin's Fury, just press Bob. That's already a go, be gone, pretty much. You have some very big burst damage, but that is actually very healable for a lot of specs. And if you don't have the CC accompanied with the damage that you have, you're not going to go far. And it will always depend on your teammates to do those CCs for you, because you're a very egocentrical spec in general. You're not like a utility machine like an arms warrior. If an arms warrior actually decides to be a utility machine at PvP talents, he can do that. Like he can play dual, wall banner, he can play double intervene. You can also do that as Fury Warrior, but I think it's very much difficult to do so as a Fury Warrior. You can also have like double Blaze Storm that is slowing for 17%. While Fury Warrior, they have really nothing. They don't have even a anti-CC like a Blade Storm, where you can actually say, look, for 5 seconds you cannot CC me, or you cannot root me, or you cannot slow me. For Arms Warrior, they can't have that. So I think it's not only the damage that you should watch. I think damage, yes, Fury Warrior is kind of comparable to Havoc Demon Hunter, although it's only the burst proportion. And the Havoc Demon Hunter, even whenever he's not like essence breaking, he's still going to do a lot of damage as well. Also the hunt on Demon Hunter and such. Again, there's a lot of things that are counting into it. I think the live representation is not there for a popular spec, which is Fury Warrior. The power of the spec is not there as well. It feels redundant at dampening. Longer games are actually just a rip for you. So there's a multitude of things that are actually playing versus you. And the only reason why it's not D tier is because I'm comparing with D tiers. If there was no D tier specs, it would be D tier instead. So that's the only reason why it's not D tier. But again, you can fight me on it in the comment section below. I think a lot of people like misjudge Fury for God knows which reason, because again, there is no reason to misjudge him higher than it is. But anyways, let's talk about rogues. Let's talk about rogues. I think a lot of people want to talk about rogues. Let's talk about rogues. Assassination rogue, it has, I would say there is a build, again, with King's Bane and Shadowlands, and you pretty much like have a go every 30 seconds you have a kidney go, and every 1 minute you have a Shadowlands go. And the Shadowlands go is with King's Bane, where you can actually, again, you can see some crazy crits like 300k, which is not always. Again, it's really dependent on procs and other things that are actually happening in the game. But most likely you're going to crit between 150k and 250k. And at that go, it's the most dangerous go, and you can also have a Death Mark go, which is every 2 minutes, which you can pair it with your Shadowlands. And at that point, you can actually deal some crazy damage. But the issue is with Assassination Rogue is with the resurgence of Holy Paladin. And again, Holy Paladin, I don't think it's like the best spec hit out there, but it is more and more popular right now. And Evokers as well, Devastation Evokers, Preservation Evokers, and also just Retribution Paladins, you kind of get wrecked on a few things. Like, it's not like you have a shadowy duel where you can literally say, look, it's only you and me for 5 seconds. No, Assassination Rogues has only a smoke bomb and that's it. So you have to use your smoke bomb very well and very strategically. Also, you're very squishy in a meta where your games are going to be longer. I think the games for an Assassination Rogues are actually going to be shorter because of the amount of defenses you don't have. The only thing you have is CC, and even that CC is actually used more likely on the kill target than on the off target. You have sap and blind on the healer, but sometimes you don't get it off because of social shenanigans, like for example warrior leaping onto them instead of letting you sap. But yeah, I mean, I want to put them at A tier, but I'm going to be realistic. In most lobbies, you're not going to feel A tier. And yes, you have a go. Yes, you can be carried because of that. And yes, you can also have like insane management of your CDs and you do well and such. But I feel like it is more a B tier because of all the factors that I said. It is a good spec. Again, B tier means it is good. Again, I'm going to type it because people think B tier is bad. B tier is good, but it's not meta in a meta where you have Holy Paladins, Retribution Paladins, Evokers, Devastation Evokers in general. Again, I think Assassination Rogue is just not like it right now. But you can do good on it. Again, this tier is not going to say, look, Fury Warrior, you cannot pass 2400 or 2100 or 1800. It is just meaning, look, with those specs, you'll have more difficulties regardless. But you can like overcome it, or you just like see, okay, I'm doing bad because of that. I'm doing bad on Fury. What is the reason? Well, this is the reason. At least you have like some excuses, I would say, whenever something is going bad. And if you're like on Destruction Warlock and you're not doing good, it's most likely because you're not trained enough, or you don't know every single situation, or you're at MMR, which it's not really ideal to play as a caster. And that's something you kind of have to realize with tier lists. It's like something very opinionated, but also it's not really the factor that is going to say, look, you're not climbing, but it can explain a lot of issues you have with climbing, for example. Augmentation work is D tier. I don't know if I'm going to talk about it because I just see so little augmentation workers. I think a spec that is reliant so badly on your teammates on a game mode where you want to actually kill your teammates is not good. So I think in threes it might be a bit better, just a bit. But I think in Soul Shuffle, if you're like playing with rank ones and such, maybe it could work. And even then, I think there is a lot of like go arounds you can do versus augmentation evokers. And weak auras are way better for them now, against them, I would say. But I think augmentation evoker is back to the shopping block, I would say, for their spec. They need to be reworked somehow, some way, at least for PvP. Maybe in PvE they need to be nerfed or whatever, because I do feel I see a lot of augmentation evokers in PvE, but in PvP, I think it just simply doesn't work. Devastation Evoker. Let's talk about Devastation Evoker. Oh, I need to talk about the other rogue specs. My excuses, but let's talk about Devastation first. Devastation is A+. I think it's like a slept on spec. Does insane damage at all times. Dragon Rage just makes your goes more consistent. You have double wall, which sometimes feels like you're hitting a wall. Depending on who you're facing, Devastation Evoker is very tanky, and depending on who you're facing, it feels a bit squishy. Again, it will always depend on how you use your CC, your damage, if you're hitting on walls or not. If you're doing like a deep breath and you see like them popping like pain suppressions and such, just stop your go and do it like again in a few seconds, instead of like hitting your full go like Eternity Surge and such on something that has a 40% wall. But that's a tip. Again, I'm also guilty of that, like on any spec. But if you can stop your go whenever you're seeing them doing defensives into air, just do it. Wait out, try to CC, and then go back with your damage. But overall, I think Devastation Evoker is like crazy. They have crazy PvP talents, they have crazy damage. It's not cheesy anymore. You're not relying on a fire breath doing like one shot. Your disintegrate is doing a lot of damage. It's also actually very hard to kick as a melee versus Devastation Evoker, because it feels like you don't have a lot of uptime. And like Arcane Mage, a very good Devastation Evoker is going to feel like unkillable. Like, it's very hard to interrupt someone that is not like close to you, right? So I think A+ is deserved. I do feel like it's better than Arcane Mage, but I don't think it's like better than the demonology warlock right now. Preservation Evoker. Let's finish Evokers really quickly. After their buffs, it feels like it's a bit better to heal on. I'm going to put them at B tier. I don't think like it's fantastic by any means. I don't think it's meta, because again, it really depends on who you're facing. Again, you have matchups where these spells are very strong, for example, versus Holy Paladins. If you can dispel Bob, it's actually crazy. If you can actually dispel like HOTS, like that are freshly put on the resto druid, it actually eats their mana. You can also like rely on lobbies where you can play super aggressive, and then you have lobbies where you cannot play aggressive. It feels like you're going to run out of steam eventually, because everything is CD based. Once you don't have a CD, even for your Dragon Breath, well, it feels like very bad. But if you can actually like outlive that, and with dampening and such, I feel like your mana is not terrible. And you do have some great CDs at 1 minute marks and such, but I think the longer it goes, the worse it becomes. You also have good damage, so you have some agency in games, but I do feel like, again, you're getting countered by roots. I think resto shamans are your biggest offender, for example. I think in general, it's doing better than previously, so I think it kind of deserves a beat here. Let's talk about Subtlety Rogue, because I was talking about rogues first. Subtlety Rogue is now A tier in my opinion. I believe I put them at S tier in my previous one. For me, it's A tier now, because I think, and I truly think, Subtlety Rogue is a very difficult spec to play, and very difficult spec to play with. I'm going to be honest, if you have a stun, and you're playing with a subtlety rogue, it feels kind of terrible that you kind of are invited to not use your stun. And it's also counterintuitive in general. You kind of learned by playing Soul Shuffle, by playing your spec, that you want to use your CC to again not hold CDs but CCs, but also just be able to put pressure. But by doing that, you kind of delay the goals of a subtlety rogue. So again, if you're not in habit of playing with a subtlety rogue in your team, it kind of feels like, again, if you're a warrior or a DH or whatever, not really great. But of course, if you're playing like with a warlock or with a mage, subtlety rogue becomes a bit better, for example. But I think with the stamina buff, your one-shot goes are a bit less one-shot goes. Sometimes you have shadowy duels where it feels like you're not going to kill the target, and he will get a defensive, and all of your CDs got blown, and you didn't get something in return. Sometimes you get a trinket in a defensive, but even then, sometimes the defensives are going to be back before your shadow blades are going back. You will have to double vanish to get your CDs back, for example, and by doing that, you do become a kill target. If I see you double vanish and you have cloak and evasion that are gone, then you become a target for me. But again, I think it really depends on who you're facing. If you're playing versus the best subtlety rogue on the planet, it feels like it's S tier. If you're playing like Mr. Everyone, Mr. 1800, 2K, 2.1K, whatever, or even 1600 or lower, it feels like subtlety rogue are a bit more manageable. It feels a bit worse on the tier list. But again, it will always depend on who you're facing and perspective. And I think I'm not really scared of sub rogue right now. I'm more scared about the other specs right now. Let's talk about outlaw rogue. Outlaw rogue is interesting because the armor nerfs are working for them. It's a full physical damage dealer. They didn't get a nerf. They have crazy CC, they have the opportunities to do well, but in general, I think it's very difficult to do well on the Outlaw Rogue. I think the rotation is a bit difficult to see and to remark of someone being good on it. I think Outlaw Rogue has the potential of being as good, or I would even say better than a subtlety rogue. I think it's really depending on matchups and such. I'm going to say again, I might be wrong, but I think if you're counting every single elo and you're counting on the fact that it's a hard spec, I do feel like it's A tier, probably better than subtlety rogue. I think it is more meta than subtlety rogue. I think even in tournaments, outlaw rogues are going to be better than subtlety rogue. But I think also in normal play, like right now, if you want to do a soul shuffle, I think Outlaw Rogue is way better than Subtlety Rogue if they know how to do their rotations with like the crank shots and such. But we'll have to see. Personally, I'm not a fan of Outlaw Rogue. Whenever I'm seeing one, I feel like either he's like a king or he is like the loser of the losers and going 0-6. There is no really a in between. At least from the games I've played, multiple games I've played. I also see like Holy Paladin being a big counter to them, like Sacrifice, Double Bop. I think it's too big to go through, but then you have like better matchups, like for example, like versus Priests, versus a Shaman. You have ways to play around your strength. So that's why I'm going to put them at 8 here. Now let's talk about Hunters. Hunters is actually very interesting. I think BM Hunter is like unscarfed of the nerfs. I think armor buffs and nerfs are actually playing in the favor of a BM Hunter. It's actually surprising it is not touched, because I think it is wrecking 2s, it's wrecking 3s, and it is wrecking Soul Shuffle. I think the only thing that is explaining is they cannot really nerf something that is just baseline good. I think the damage, if they nerf the damage, that's all they have, to be honest. I mean, they have great CC, let's be honest, but if they nerf damage, it feels like, again, it's the same for Havoc Demonology, right? They're designed around doing great damage at all times. So if they become a bit less of that, it feels like, again, why not play MM? But I do feel like they do need a nerf somewhere. I don't know. I think they just need a design rework. I don't think it should work like this way in PvP. But again, I play BM as well, so I understand the struggles of designing and how they could design it a bit more, a bit less noob friendly. But again, you do need a noob spec in the game. Like again, I'm not saying like pejorative, at least. I'm not saying that in a bad way, right? It's not a noob spec per se. I think there is a difference between a good one and a bad one, but the difference is very very low, like compared to a arcane mage or compared to a sub rogue or compared to any warlock specs. So I do feel like BM Hunter is very strong, but it's very hard to see, and I don't know what they could nerf to put it back. I think the force set kind of enables them also like doing crazy damage. So and next season is again the same tier set, so I presume that they are going to stay S tier for a long time, especially in this meta where versus casters they're doing good, versus meaties they're doing good. You don't really have a natural enemy right now. I feel like roots can actually be a natural enemies of like pets, but again, soul shuffle is very hard to coordinate that. So I do feel like soul shuffle they are very very much strong. Disc priest. I do feel like they're 8 tier now. I'm not feeling them like being good. I feel like right now they suffer in a lot of matchups. But I do feel like they're still meta. They can like solo carry games sometimes, and then you have like games where you're truly at the mercy of your DPSers. And the longer the games goes, the worse it is for like Disc Priest. But I don't think like I can put them lower than that because I do feel like look, Disc Priest is better than Preservation Evoker. The ladder kind of talks about it, and also the representation and the popularity of the spec kind of, again, is a bit skewed because it is a popular spec. But I do feel like the healing throughput is not fantastic. You have to go full mastery if you want to have somewhat of a throughput, which kind of defeats the purpose of Disc Priest. You have to do a lot of like direct healing, which is not great. For now, I think A tier is a good spot. It might be on the lower end of A tier. I do understand the concerns of a lot of Disc Priest in general. I know that it feels worse the more patches we are in, but I think it is like one buff away to go back to S tier, or like one nerf away to go back to C tier. I think right now it is like balanced. Let's talk about the other specs to go back to the A tier or A plus, and the same for S tiers to be back at A plus or A tiers. I think that would be the best way to go. Holy Priest, surprisingly, I'm going to put them at A tier. I think the buffs to healing is more noticeable than I would think. I also think the meta switches and like the overall agency that you got with the damage buffs that you got is making Holy Priest a bit more aggressive than I would think. I think the only issue is if they have an external like a pain suppression or something, it would be shooting at S tier. Like it would be very very crazy. I think the issue is you don't have that. It's also very noticeable whenever they are healing like crazy amounts because they're going for Spirit Angel, for example. They put a Ray of Hope on the enemy, on the ally. You have like a big like weak aura saying, look, that guy is protected. It's way more noticeable whenever the Holy Priest is doing a CD than let's say a Disc Priest with Pain Suppression or like Rupture. So I think that's also why it's also a bit easier to play against one. But whenever I'm looking details, it feels like they're healing crazy amounts, man. With the mastery, with just in general the Prayer of Mending on like a lot of cleave matchups, with also Serenity doing like crazy healing. So again, I think the one thing that again I told it multiple times in multiple videos, it is unintuitive how they heal. They need to heal someone that is very very low HP, and which is something you don't want to have in Soul Shuffle. Like someone at 10% or 20% HP is just a death sentence. You just need 1 CC to be gone. But if you're able to heal at 20% HP, you're going to full heal someone. So it's crazy how they have that. I think they are balanced right now, but I think the only issue they have, the real issue they have, is actually mana. But again, if you know how to manage your mana in Soul Shuffle, you don't often get like it's not like often you are really going You have some matchups and some specs that they have like those issues, for example mistweavers, but I think right now they are on a better spot than previously. I would highly recommend to check it out. Personally, I will check it out very soon. But from what I've seen, it may be a placebo. It may be a meta swap, that a switch that made Holy Priest better. But I think I see way more Holy Priests these days than, let's say, a Disc Priest. So it kind of tells maybe the story. Maybe people are trying it out. But I do feel like right now, I feel like I see more Holy Priests. Shadow Priest. I think I'm going to be controversial right now. It was C tier previously. For me now it's B tier. I would say on the same level as Affliction Warlock. The only issue they have is mobility. I saw a lot of Shadow Priest actually saying, you know what, mobility, you don't want me, I'm going to stand here, I'm not going to move 1 inch. And lo and behold, they actually do a lot of damage and actually a lot of CC, and it feels like it doesn't matter. They're facing like damage and they're just eating it up. But it really requires a good healer. If you don't have a good healer, don't do that. But if you are like going soul shuffle and you're going higher and higher, it feels like the healers knows how they heal. And if the games are longer, the Shadow Priest is going to win just basically because of a CC happening on like someone that has no trinket, or a big amount of damage that you can do with your Devouring Plague that actually hits for very big. Also, like Mind Spike Insanity, if you can't get it off, it is like a minimum of 120k normal hit and can crit for way higher. I think in general, Shadow Priest is in a better spot. I would say that design-wise it is crap, but that's my opinion. I think they need a mobility spell. They kind of need another buff here and there, but do I put them at B tier or lower? That's very tough, man. Maybe like this. Maybe the lowest of B tier. Because it is strong, but I would say it is really strong in the right hands with a good healer and a good off DPS. Like, for example, if you have a silence, don't use it on the healer whenever you know the Shadow Priest is going to do that on the healer, for example. Or don't use a stun if you feel like he can psychic horror the enemy, so don't do that as well. So there are a few things. So for example, they don't peel or they don't do anything to stop the other DPS to actually like get to your Shadow Priest. But I think it really depends on lobbies, man. I think the higher you go, Shadow Priest becomes very potent. But I think you cannot rely that on our tier list. I think it's very difficult to have Shadow Priest at that level. Like I would say, at 2400 or 2100, you could easily say A or A plus. But I'm thinking about low elo. Thinking about low elo. Thinking about like 1800, 2k. Some healers still don't know how to heal, and some DPSers don't know how to DPS. So it feels like again it's like 50% chance of getting a good lobby or a bad lobby, and then you have like another 50% chance of like is it a healer diff or is it going to be a DPS diff? So for now, I think it's going to be B tier. Let's talk about Unholy DK. I think the nerfs kind of put them in line. They are still good. I think it's still meta, but they did really got touched. I think necrotic wounds, that nerf is kind of big. Again, it's 4% to 3%. You would think it's only 1%, but it's like 25% nerf on the ability, like on both portions, the healing wise and the blocking of the healing. So I think that's very big. Death Coil nerf, the Festering Wounds nerf, also big. I think the survivability nerf is also not that good. I think the longer the games goes, it becomes way more squishy as well. You kind of have to set the tone at the start of the match. So what you want to do is actually grip the healer, put a blinding sleet, put a strangulate, put a asphyxiate, and all of that try to like chain CC and try to like put pressure enough that they're going to use a big CD or trinket, right? I think it's very mood lobby dependent. If you're like facing full warriors, well, good luck. If you're facing a destruction warlock, an elemental shaman, good luck. Again, even if it's magic users, you're not immune to death. A BM hunter is like straight up just eating you alive. You have some good matchups here and there, but you are definitely not a free win like you were previously. So again, unholy DK 8 tier. Hopefully people understand and read between the lines of he was really S tier, and then like those nerfs and plus the armor changes, plus the stamina buffs and nerfs towards classes, because the stamina buff is effectively a nerf for unholy DK. The longer the game goes, the less opportunity do you have to win. So I think 8 tier is a fair spot. Frost Decay, I think it's a C tier. I might put them at D tier, but I think separation needs to be done. I do feel like Frost Decay is better than Fury. I really think Fury War is really crap. But Frost Decay, it's good at certain points in the match. If healers don't know what's up and they don't know they're the target, then good luck to them. If you're like facing, like if you're a resto druid and you don't have hots on you versus a Frost Decay, you already did something wrong. If you're not trinketing something early to bear form or to let's say tranquility, although tranquility first minute I would not do that, but like use a CD to survive, you're going to be like wrecked. But if you have like a healer that is very experienced, he's not going to die to a Frost Decay, which Frost Decays, they kind of need multiple goes to actually win. So again, I think dampening of the games and then the games being longer helps them a bit, just a bit, but not that much, because if the game is very long, the trinkets are up and then you don't have a go anymore. So also you get countered by disarm pretty hefty. Like again, like already said that multiple times. But again, I think Frost Decay needs a rework somehow, some way, and hopefully we do get it very soon. Let's talk about Havoc Demon Hunter. I think Havoc Demon Hunter is now A+ in my opinion. Actually, no, he's S tier. Actually, S tier. My bad. Because I think if I'm looking at melees and in general, but also the meta, they're untouched. So the damage is quite crazy. I think they do need a nerf. I think on the hunt. The force is actually crazy because it actually resets the hunt way too soon, which makes for crazy potential bursts windows that you should not have and would not have in previous season, for example. So for me, C tier, S tier, it is probably top 2 melee right now, and it will stay for a long while. I think right now, if it's not nerfed, it's probably going to be overplayed by a long shot. Let's talk about monks. Windwalker, I think top DPS. I think it's the best melee. Now, is it the best spec? I think it's like equal to DH. I think it's equal, but I don't think it's better than Destruction Warlock. I think Destruction Warlock is like very strong, and BM Hunter as well. I think those two, they are untouchable, very untouchable actually. They're very good, and I think people are like sleeping on them. Like again, they're talking about Havoc Demon Hunter, they're talking about Windwalkers, they're talking about Unholy DKs, but they forget about Destruction Warlock and BM Hunter, and that's why we are in this situation where they're actually doing crazy amount of damage, which again, understandably, they need that, but yeah, we'll see. Windwalker, very strong, has a lot of burst, a lot of CC, a good Windwalker, they know how to get out of a like fruity situation, and they don't need to line the healer too much, while very bad ones, they line the healer very quickly, they use defensively like bad decisions, for example, Touch of Karma at 100% HP, for example, just for damage. It's crazy, but some people do that. But there is that, I think, right now. Windwalker, very strong. Mistweaver. I think it's equal to Disc Priest and Holy Priest. Depending on Fistweaver or Mistweaver, I would say Fistweaving is way better whenever you're going higher MMR. It becomes way worse the lower you are because people don't know how it works, so they kite you, and if they kite you, there's no way for you to heal. So again, if your allies are kiting you and those allies are kiting the enemies, it becomes actually very hard to catch up. Also, you have to use cities way too quickly. But overall, I think Mistweavers are actually strong. They have crazy healing, they have bad mana. If you're fist weaving, it's actually like melee cleaves are like a candy for you. You prefer that for the mass cleaves you get with blackout kicks, which effectively gives you a lot of healing. But I think in general, Mistweaver is alright. So I think A tier, very good meta, but not crazy or something like that. Let's talk about Shamans. I think Shaman is actually doing alright. I'm going to say it's also A tier. I do really think healers are like equal. I do feel like it's better than Mistweaver though. Resto Shaman, the higher you go, the better it is for you. But the lava burst damage increases and Stormkeeper, because you can lightning bolt Stormkeeper actually, it is making you do a lot of damage. Like 120k lava bursts, you can Stormkeeper for over 200k. If you're lucky, you get a lot of crits, and that can actually be lethal. Your healing is very good. The longer the game goes, the less interesting it becomes for you, but again, you have ways to shorten the games, I would say. I think overall it has good throughput. The most mastery you have, the better it is. Overall, I think the foresight is in fantastic point, and the nerfs to the armor for you is not really affecting too much, because again, the likelihood of them going for healer is very low. Like, it happens sometimes, it is very annoying, but the more likely is they're going to train someone else, and that actually helps you a lot with your hexes, with your healing, with overall your setups, your roots, static field totem, and displacing them. All of this is actually making Resto Shaman being a good spec. Enhancement Shaman, C tier. I do think that if you're looking at ladder and you would say, look, you have a lot of people being over 2400 and such. They do forget that it's like one guy with 19 ults being like 2400. So I think right now Enhancement Shaman is not in a great spot. I don't think it's about the damage. I think it's like about the externals and defensives you have. You have nothing to respond to rogues in general. It feels like you are the mercy on most matchups. It doesn't feel like you can carry too hard. You can do that with your damage. If you get a lucky crit on lightning bolt, you can do actually very well. But crit is not something you're building for, so it is very lucky to have that. I think Enhancement Shaman, they are on the same level as Frosty K, I think. Like something like that. I think like really you kind of have to main it to be proficient at it. Elemental Shaman, A+. I do believe. You have a lot of great matchups. I think, yes, you're dependent on people like finish offing your targets and doing the CC with you. But again, you have pushes, double push actually. You have roots, you have static field totem, which you can displace them. You have grounding totem, you have wind shear, which is a interrupt for 12-second CD, which is actually very neat for a caster. You have hex, you have lava burst, which you don't have to cast. So basically, if they train you or not, the damage is the same. And overall, I think it's a fantastic spec right now. Damage is really good. I think Elemental Shaman, just in general, is a spec that is surprisingly good at doing elemental things in general. Feral Druid. Let's talk about Feral Druid. I think statistics kind of talk for itself, but it's not a very popular spec in general. But I do feel like you can rely on bites, but you actually rely too much on Cyclone, which I think is not really great. It's very stoppable. You're not playing with haste, so Cyclones are very slow casts. Yes, getting countered on it is not like the end of the world, but it does reduce your DPS because Feral Frenzy procs of your PvP talents only occur with Cyclones. I do feel like it's easier. The rep kind of talks about it like I think it's the lowest representing spec for melees, and it kind of tells on a somewhat not that popular spec, but also just in general it's too squishy. I think if someone looks at you, you're dead pretty much, and you don't want that in soul shuffle. It kind of needs a rework on defensive purposes in general, but it will always depend on PvE. If in PvE they die a lot, then they will get changes. If they don't die a lot, then they will not get changes pretty much. Balance Druid got the nerf on bear form. They got also a nerf on bear form, by the way, but also they got a buff on the healing from frenzied regeneration, which is not that noticeable. I do feel like Boomkin kind of low. They kind of lost their prime. I do feel like they're A+ right now. Really close to S tier though, but I do feel like now that you got a nerf on armor on bear form, which is about 5%. It is going to be noticeable how you're going to suffer versus windwalkers. I think windwalkers are just there to ruin your life. And I think you kind of need a great team to be able to do well on the balance druid. You can solo carry games, but it will be infinitely harder for you. And I think it kind of needs a little downgrade on the tier list. I'm going to move my camera so you can see. The video is already like 1 hour long, but whatever. We're here to explain and we're here to understand the tier list. Resto Druid, they're still S tier. Although they got nerfed, it's not enough. I do feel like they're S tier. They have Cyclone, which is big. They have like multiple things that are quite big for Resto Druid, which is like 3 ounce healing through line of sight. You have some crazy heals with Live Bloom. I think you have good CDs. It is actually not the easiest spec to swap on. Although like someone that is very bad at Resto Druid, they will just die very quickly on the swap. Someone that is actually very good and thrive on it, he's going to make you waste time. So overall, S tier, I think it's quite deserved. Holy Paladin, I'm going to put them at A+. I think it's the second best healer. You have some crazy bad matchups, let's be honest, but you're still there. I think any caster lobby is going to be terrible for you. Any lobby that doesn't know how to interrupt the caster is also going to be very bad for you. I think Havoc Demonology is also disgusting versus you. Windwalkers as well, because they can just swap you and then you have like to panic and you have to play defensively, and then you have a Bob and you have a Divine Shield that's getting dispelled or mass dispelled by the enemy healer. So you have a lot of things going on, and I do feel like they're like deserved A+. But really, if I want to say that they are A tier and like Resto Druid is the sole competitor. But I do believe like Holy Paladin got some great matchups versus melees, which that itself can also be a victory for Holy Paladins. Retribution Paladin, let's talk about Paladins first. They got a buff. They are better right now, but you have still crazy bad matchups. I do feel like they're A+, like they're A very quick, like very close to A+. I think the only thing that is actually like limiting them is you don't have great self heals. You have to sacrifice either Bob or Spell Warden depending on who you're facing. And if you're facing a melee with a ranged DPS, like a melee with a ranged, it becomes very hard to do something in the game. You have to play very aggro, and sometimes it doesn't work out for you as a Retribution Paladin. The buffs to damage is actually crazy. It's deserved though, but crazy. I think defensively they are like quite strong, but I think it would be nice to have some off heals towards your target so you can actually help with dealing with like, let's say, pressure, but also just in general dealing with your enemies and your allies in the problems, I would say. MM Hunter, let's be quick about it. I do feel like they're okay, but I think it's B tier. I think it's too easily stopped. That's the only issue in my eyes. They can do more damage than BM Hunter, but theoretically, that's it. Practically, being stationary to do aim shots, being like living about true shot and trying to win with a true shot is not always like a possibility. I think just because of that, I do put them at B tier. I want to put them higher, but I'm thinking about all the lobbies you could have that are very terrible. And then you have like the odd lobby where you're facing a frost mage with a, let's say, fire mage or whatever. You're going to one shot someone. It doesn't matter who you're facing. But if you're facing, let's say, a warrior with a heavy demon hunter, then you already know it's going to be a suffering for you. And you will have to play defensively versus that. MM Hunter, strong, but it's pretty much like a pub stomper, pretty much. Survival Hunter, I do feel like with the buffs, I want to put them at A tier, maybe just ahead of Outlaw Rogue. They got some good damage, let's be honest. That's the only thing that kind of carries them towards that the A tier, or else they would be B tier. But I also need to have some separation. Do I want to put them at the same tier as Assassination Rogue, MM Hunter, Affliction Warlock, Preservation Evoker, or Shadow Priest? No, not really. I think Survival Hunter actually is a great spec. It does get countered on a few matchups, but so does a Arms Warrior. So I think in general it kind of deserves the A tier, and that's it. It's a 1 hour video. My voice is gone. I want to drink. I want to relax a bit. But I'm going to post it tonight. Hopefully you did watch the whole video. It is a very big chunk, but you don't need to watch it like completely from the get-go. You can just watch it like in the morning as a podcast kinda, and then you can watch it while you are in your break at your work or school, and then you can maybe like reopen the video and watch it at night or at the evening whenever you're eating, or after eating, or after the kids are in bed. But again, I understand it's a big video, but I do explain everything in detail. So if you want to talk about it in the comment section below, if you want to debate with me, if you want to interact with me, it's something very simple. Comment below and I will be responding. If it's something that is not really constructive, then I will be also very, very silly. But if you're not silly and you kind of are there with opinions and with real facts and with real talking points, then I will be also fighting with you with talking points, but at least we will be talking. So again, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Be sure to stay safe. We will catch each other probably very soon in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.